Hey guys, hello, how are you doing? I hope you are doing fine. As you can see, tonight we have Ricky, which is very, very active. He just got back from his evening walk and he feels like him to have all the attention for himself. So, yeah, unfortunately, probably we will have to deal with him quite a lot tonight. Now he's going to eat. Hopefully, that will keep him busy for a while. So, we are all here to read 3 more chapters of my fan fiction about Harry. And yeah, by now, if you follow up to here, you probably know what's about anyway. So I don't need to explain anything. I'm just gonna do a little recap of what happened the last week. So, well, we have Harry that decided to get an interview to lessen the pressure of media. He's starting to understand that probably it's not going to work. But they decided to do for Witch Weekly because Ginny apparently really cared to be on the cover of Witch Weekly, despite Harry never thought about that. And he thought it was actually against their inclination. But I thought that Witch Weekly was something like kind of Vogue. So probably every woman, at least once in a while, once in a lifetime, wished to appear on a cover of such a magazine. So she is really excited, and she was so excited that keep secret from Harry that the owner of Witch Weekly is the cousin of Rita Skeeter. And this woman is called Margaret Skeeter. Is pretty much like her, more or less. And yeah, Harry, I think quite rightly, was a bit upset about this, but he didn't have any choice that go through it. So yeah, tonight we are gonna see about the shooting, and we will have a nice argument. I always love argument. I think they're real fun. And yeah, by the way, just before to start this live, I was kind of listening to the previous one, and I realized how strong my accent is. I've got such an Italian accent, so strong. And the funny thing is that when I speak, I don't hear it at all. But when I open one of my live, it's so strong. I get really embarrassed. But then I'll try not to think about it. Otherwise, I won't do anything. So yeah, I guess that if Ricky will allow us, we can start with chapter 18, which is called The Shooting. As soon as the interview was done, Harry's intimidation hadn't exactly worked miracles, but it could surely have been worse. They let him in a different room where a shooting space had been created. A white linen was covering one of the walls, and many cameras were around it. There was again Madeleine supervising Jimmy's hair and makeup, and many members of the staff. One photographer stood out amidst the rest, a young, tall, skinny wizard dressed in a particular fashion. He sported a very colorful wizarding robe, but underneath, Harry could spot some very muggle trainers, very well recognizable by the brand. Margaret introduced him to them as Bernard. Apparently, he was a quite famous photographer in the wizarding world, and Ginny knew him well, as he had taken many pictures of the Chudley Cannon team. They exchanged a friendly and loud salutation with kisses and shrills. Ginny, overexcited to be the one photographed instead of his team, and him, scarcely less excited, revealing that it was a long time he hoped to have the honor of taking those shots. "I'll make you both look smashing," he promised, and turning to Harry, "You look sexy as a god. You won't recognize yourself." Why does everybody today not want us to be able to recognize ourselves? I was thinking, are you willing to take your clothes off? We could try, among the others, for some artistic nude or something. Like black and white, maybe. The contrast of of your skin colors would look great in black and white? He asked pensively while adjusting some setup on his camera. Absolutely not! Why not? Harry and Ginny answered at the same time. The first one in consternation and the second one pensively. Harry took her by the arm and dragged her away in a corner. Are you joking, I hope? He asked once they were at a safe distance. Coming from somebody that only a few days ago had said that she wanted to be the only one to see Harry in his pants, it was odd. This interview had really made her go mad. Harry, it's just art. It'll be fun. I remind you that it's art that the whole magical community is going to see, he retorted, upset. But nothing is going to be displayed, really, Ginny laughed. I'm not stripping myself in front of these people, he hissed between his teeth. And that's final. And as a safe measure, he added, you won't either. She looked at him challenging. It's my body. I'll do whatever I want with it. Ginny, this is not the moment to test me, he answered threateningly. If you do, I swear I'll go away. Fine, she answered primly. I won't. But let it be clear that if I want to, I can. For heaven's sake, when did I ever even try to forbid you anything? And overall, would you allow me to? He said as he followed her, already getting back to Bernard, that was waiting patiently, fiddling with his camera. Harry told him of his unwillingness. Oh, such a shame! He uttered, broken-hearted. We could have taken some very nice shots. Why to keep all this hotness hidden under some loincloth? I don't understand, he said, disappointed, and then pleading. But you will allow me to take some individual shots at least, will you? You must. Ginny had already agreed, and I won't hear a no for an answer. Harry was in serious difficulty now. Ginny didn't help, sniggering like a schoolgirl. He tried to gabble a polite refuse, as he didn't care in the least to have pictures of himself, but Bernard didn't allow him to. He turned to Ginny in supplication. Come on, love. You must convince him. We are going to take the best picture in the world history. Harry, please, to make me happy. I'd love to have some nice pictures of you, she said now, all honey-like, making him lean enough to kiss him tenderly on the lips, letting her fingers slide softly on his chest. From each one of them, Harry felt quivers going through his body, and in a flash, he was reminded about the kids being at the barrow that night. For the love of God, why has she got all this power over me? Okay, all right, he gave in grudgingly. Bernard thrilled, delighted. He and Madeleine whisked towards some racks, all in a flutter, taking out some clothes, examining them, and putting them aside. Shrills could be heard a mile off. Margaret was supervising the whole scene from a corner with a haughty expression, and Harry was regretting very much to have accepted to do all this. Bernard and Madeleine got back with an enormous stack for them, to be changed almost at every shot. Ginny took a white dress from the pile, and old Giddy bellowed, This is Ferrarios! It's delightful! Bernard and Madeleine were as excited as her. They started gibbering about it a good deal, and when Ginny thrusted it under his nose, repeating, Harry, see! This is Ferrarios! Harry raised his eyebrows, not comprehending what all the fuss was about. Who is he? A friend of yours? He asked. They all fell silent, looking in disbelief, bordering on offended. It's a designer, Harry, a very famous one, Ginny said dryly, in the end. Ah, very pretty. He said, try to compensate for his lack of mundane knowledge. Look, shall we start? He said, impatient to be out of the cage of madness and frivolity as soon as might be. Bernard assented, eyes glinting. gave him and Ginny the first outfits of the day. They changed, and for the next 2 hours, they smiled, they kissed, they embraced, in front of an avid camera that caught all it was possible to catch, and more. Bernard encouraging them and ordering them about in turn. Harry tried to forget about everything, but Ginny, over the moon with joy and excitement, and seeing her so happy and beautiful, he managed in his intention to let himself loosen up. After that, Bernard took some pictures of Ginny, and Harry was pleased to watch her enjoying herself in changing clothes, relishing in the compliments and requests from Bernard. But when it was his turn, he regretted again bitterly the whole business. He changed his clothes so many times he lost count. He had to look up, look down, and smile, and glare, sit down and stand up. At one point, Bernard even soaked him wet with water, made him do some push-up, performing some spells, and he even made appear a fiery and ruffled puppy dragon that tried to snap Harry's finger off when he tried to get close. And as Harry was starting to feel very much like a puppet without any will of his own, and overall knackered, Bernard seemed to grow in energies, jumping left, right, and center with glee, clicking away like crazy. When he finally let him free, after many more assurances of having taken brilliant pictures, Ginny wasn't inside any longer. Instead, a small crowd had gathered in the room, all eager to have autograph and picture taken with him. It took him ages to satisfy everybody, and his forbearance was at the lowest point. He just wished to get home with something cool to drink and be pampered by a grateful Ginny. As he was looking for her, Margaret approached him, carrying some parchment and quills, looking very busy. If you are looking for your wife, you'll find her in the next room. She's exchanging 2 words with Phil Houghton. You know, she added, smirking, the Blizzard captain. He was giving an interview too. And surely, feeling revengeful for Harry's previous threat, continued gloatingly. I would be on my guard if I were you. He's a very good looking man, and he seems quite intimate with her. She winked, conspiratorial. Harry felt a twinge of irritation mount. He knew the man very well. He was a very popular Quidditch player, and Harry hated to admit, a good one as well, who many a time had gravitated around Ginny when the two teams were meeting in a match. Harry usually didn't assist to all the Chudley Cannons match, despite he enjoyed them very much because of the hassle of being in the magical community. But he never missed the one against that team to keep an eye on him. He had noticed his behavior toward her and had tried to bear it composedly. He was aware to have a jealous nature and fought hard to keep it under control. But with that guy, he had some difficulties. He was clear he had some wishes over Ginny, and she seemed, or pretended, to be totally unaware of it. They had a few rows about it. She asserted that he never actually flirted with her, but Harry saw a lot of unnecessary physical contact between the two that drove him crazy. This Phil was cordially hostile toward Harry. He was a very public person, glad to be one, and never letting go of the opportunities to be on any newspaper. He considered Harry a threat, who, without any effort, was always the most popular of the two. He obviously never admitted openly anything about it, but Harry could feel the competition hidden behind smiles and pretended fellowship. He found the two of them in the next room. It was like the one Harry and Ginny had their pictures taken, and some staff members were busily employed with their task, glancing occasionally sideways at the two. Phil was complimenting her for her looks in a pretty flirtation way, under Harry's point of view. He entered the room just in time to see him caressing Ginny's arm. Actually, caressing her arm. In 2 strides, he was on Ginny's side with a thunderous expression. He contained himself not to warn him to keep his filthy hands from Ginny, and greeted him coldly instead. Hello, Harry. Such a pleasure to meet you here, he said with his usual fake cordiality. I was just asking your lovely wife some advice for my new training. Lawyer. How are you doing? Another baby coming on? Jolly good. She looks always lovely, our Ginny, doesn't she? He said, winking at her. Our Ginny? I'll snap your neck like a twig. Yes, my wife is lovely, Harry said, trying to impart in that mile all his thoughts and unsaid sentences. We must get going, though. It was nice to see you, he concluded sharply, and not giving any chance to Ginny to add a parting word, took her by the shoulders and almost dragged her away, sure that he was going to pay for it, but unable to act otherwise. He marched back to the next room, where she maintained a dignified silence. They said goodbyes to an overexcited Bernard, all busy and already working on the films. He promised them to have them delivered to Ginny's office as soon as they. I'm sorry. He promised to have them delivered to Ginny's office as soon as they were ready. To an overabashed Madeleine, who flushed scarlet when Harry shook her hand, and to an overconfident Margaret, who kissed Ginny affectionately and gave him a parting clawing smile. And that was then chapter 18. I'm sorry, I stumbled on some words, and as you can see, it's that time of the year where water gets substituted with tea. I don't know where you are, but here it's pretty cold. Okay, I guess we can carry on with the next chapter. And as I said before, that it's going to be an argument. And it's funny because when yesterday I read this in Italian, my boyfriend was listening to it, and afterward he told me that um, actually he thinks it is a very Italian argument, not English at all. And he may be actually right, but well, I'm Italian, so. So, chapter 19, Jealousy. They couldn't use one of the many fireplaces in the office because of the risk to have their address being traced by the flu network. So they took the bus, both silent and tense. Harry was upset by jealousy and ready for the oncoming row he knew he was about to start as soon as they were going to be back home. And as predicted, once he opened the door, Ginny was already on the warpath on the second step inside. You have been rude. I don't want you to talk to him. Excuse me? I speak to whoever I wish, and you have no right to behave in such a way. Harry closed the door behind them, fighting hard not to slam it, already flying off the handle. This guy is trying to get off with you, and stop pretending he's not, he said, marching toward the living room. Oh, just drop it, would you? He's not, he's just a friend, she fired back, following him outraged, throwing her handbag on the sofa and an incinerator look at him. Harry grunted. He's not a friend. I know what he wants, and it's not friendship, he said between his teeth. And how do you know? May I ask? He's a man. I know how he thinks. He doesn't bother to get friendly with a woman just to chat. She flushed angrily. What's that supposed to mean? Do you do it too? Is it what you are implying? Harry understood to have made a technical error, but he was too upset to balance his words properly. I don't. You know I don't, but that doesn't take away the fact that I know he does. He was all over you, for heaven's sake. She laughed bitterly. I hope you are kidding, spatting the sentence angrily. For years I watched you hugging, caressing, even kissing Hermione without a word, and now you are complaining because he slightly touched me? She was hitting on a delicate spot, considering how the situation had turned out to be. But at the same time, he thought it was quite different. Despite what she found out about Hermione, he was sure a woman could have a male friend. But it was virtually impossible for a man to look for a female friend without the hidden wish to take her to bed, even if just in friendship. He considered himself a happy exception, perhaps because he had I'm sorry, he had always been used to have female friends, or because he loved Ginny so much and for that reason kept himself purposely away from those women whom he felt a possible attraction. He didn't want to find himself in a tempting situation. But many men weren't as virtuous as him. Not going too far from from the circle, there was Ron. Harry wasn't so sure that given the chance, he wouldn't have cheated on Hermione. Perhaps he even did. I'm sorry, there is my cat who is playing for something. Just give me a second. Okay, sorry. Problem solved. Okay. But many men weren't as virtuous as him. Not going too far from their circle, there was Ron. Harry wasn't so sure that given the chance, he wouldn't have cheated on Hermione. Perhaps he even did. He never investigated, deciding he preferred not to know. But signs were there. When they were out by themselves, Harry noticed how he would flirt with any woman as soon as there was an opening. And he was married. This Phil wasn't even so, and what more, he was a recognized womanizer. It's not the same, he retorted. I never touched Hermione with a second intention. He does. He wants to shag you, and what's worse, he wants to do it just to be able to declare to the magical community that he has stolen my wife. That was it. That was the truth. The hateful man was just looking for a way to prevail on him to get some more publicity, and Ginny didn't even realize it. He was marching up and down the room, unable to stay still. Ginny widened her eyes at his affirmation, and then she flushed again, even more, flying onto her rage. You are actually insulting me! You know I'm something more than your wife! Perhaps you might even think it might be worth to ship me for myself! Harry laughed at this affirmation and looked at her scowling. Don't you even start with that! You know very well I think you are amazing. Too amazing for me, as a matter of fact. He doesn't shine with intelligence or observation, otherwise he'll see it too. He's just a pompous, overbearing jerk, and you are falling for him. I'm not falling for anybody. Would you quit this nonsense? It's not possible that every single time I speak with a man you must make a scene. This ought to stop. She crossed her arms, glaring at him. She was right. Absolutely, totally, completely right. And yet, he couldn't control himself. He felt threatened every time, scared that she could fall in love with somebody else, that she could realize she didn't love anymore. And what would he have done then? He had only her. He would have been meaningless without her. He couldn't even bear the thought. Why do you even stay with me? He asked in an impulse driven by the anger. She was perplexed. What? Why are you in love with me? He asked now steady, looking at her inquiringly, skittishly. He had been bothered by this doubt for years, and today he finally found the courage to ask her, prompted by some affirmation made during the interview. I don't understand, Harry. What do you mean? She still had an hostile look. They were glowering one to the other from the two opposite sides of the room. I mean what I just said. Why are you in love with me? What am I for you? Would you even have looked at me if I wasn't Harry Potter? Harry, don't be stupid, she hissed, rolling her eyes. You are Harry Potter. You know what I mean. You fell in love with me, not because of me, but because of what I represented. Would you even have noticed me if I wasn't the boy who lived? Would you even have bothered to get to know me? He was rigidly standing in the room now. The rage had turned in a bitter sentiment of suspicion and frustration. Ginny opened her mouth to speak. Ginny opened her mouth to speak. The anger had left her face to be replaced by bewilderment. She was taken aback by his question, and she didn't have an answer ready, which only enlightened her doubt. Sorry, forget it, he ranted before she could find words he wasn't sure he wanted to hear. I'm going out, he said, dashing out of the room, flew in his room, changed as fast as he could, and in the space of just seconds he was out disapparating from the house to the newly found wood where he knew he would have found silence and solitude. Once he got back, after a couple of hours spent running in a muddy wood with a very muddy mood, the house was empty. There was a note on the kitchen table. Since you feel authorized in storming out while we are having a discussion without saying where you are going, and when you will be back, I think it's only right for me to take the same liberty. Don't bother to wait for me. Could you say, in total honesty, that he didn't deserve it? Probably not. He could have seen it coming. And it was such shame, for once they could have the house for themselves, everything had to be ruined because of the field jerk. He wondered where she could be. Perhaps at the barrow. He felt tempted for a moment to check, but then discarded the idea quickly. If not, Molly would have just been alarmed, and overall, he didn't want them to find out that they had an argument, and he was totally ignorant of his wife's whereabouts. He took a late dinner made of leftover, exhausted by the full day, and went to bed right afterward. He lay there, reflecting on the day just past, mulling it over with a clear mind. It would have been impossible to hope for a different ending. He despised the whole thing so much, and even before going there was already irritated by it, totally opposite to Ginny's feelings. At least, she got her wish to be on Witch Weekly's front cover. It hadn't been a completely wasted day. And hopefully, this marked a net end to any similar experience in future. He sighed. The run had calmed his temper, and he was regretting bitterly his behavior. He didn't like to be alone in bed without her. After 17 years of marriage, he could count on the tip of his fingers the times in which they didn't sleep together, and he wasn't used to it. He felt lonely and insecure. Having raised all these doubts in his mind, it was difficult to relinquish them. He didn't feel up to be Ginny's companion. He didn't feel like having virtues enough to deserve the love of such an amazing woman. And this was corroding his self esteem, that had never been exactly high anyway. It was difficult to appreciate himself when everybody was glorifying him like a demigod. It should probably have been the opposite. He should have grown up boastful and overconfident. But it wasn't the case. He didn't feel anything special, and the thought that everybody considered him just that depressed his feelings enormously, making him feel like his real being wasn't enough. He decided to wait for Ginny awake. He didn't want to fall asleep without a reconciliation. He waited and waited, the time on the alarm clock showing him the passing of the time, and wondering when she would be back. He drifted unaware in sleep. Hello, Ariana. And here there is a dream. I'm in the shooting room. It's empty. I'm alone and I feel lonely. The only light comes from the door, where after a while I see a contour projecting against it. It's Ginny. She looks blankly at me, as if I wasn't even there, and without acknowledging me, she proceeds to the next room, where I follow her, wanting to be with her. I don't understand why she ignored me. I can hear noises and clicking of cameras. There is a crowd surrounding a man standing higher than the rest. It's my evil self, the same as the other dreams. He looks dashing, handsome, so much better than me. His eyes are still red and devilish, but nobody seems to notice, all dazzled by his look. Ginny contemplates him, admired, and when he sees her, the crowd parts to let her pass. I try to stop her reaching out, but she shrugs me off disgusted. You are nothing to Harry Potter. Nothing, she says. I try to explain to her that he is not the real Harry Potter, that I'm the real one. But she doesn't pay any attention to me anymore. She goes to him. He embraces her with lust. He's dangerous, but she doesn't seem to see it. I want to stop her, but the crowd close again on the two of them. They start to kiss passionately. I cannot get through. I'm cut out. I can just look at them, and I can do nothing to stop her. Hello, Marco. Harry woke up with a start. Ginny was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching him. You were mumbling in your sleep, she said. The room was lighted by the feeble light coming from the outside. She was in her night dress. What time is it? Harry asked, still dazed by the sudden awakening. 2 o'clock. I just got back, she said, caressing his forehead with a loving look on her face. Harry felt relieved in finding her warmth in his regard. He needed to be comforted. He snuggled up against her. I missed you. Where have you been? To Luna. We spent the evening chatting. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry for how I behaved. He apologized. It's okay, she said, keeping cuddling him. It's always enlightening speaking to Luna. She has the gift of making you see things from another perspective. What perspective? Yours, she says simply. I explained her what happened, and she just said with her dreamy voice, maybe he's only insecure. It must be difficult to be Harry Potter all the time, don't you think? It kind of throws a shadow on who he really is. Harry lowered his gaze and distractedly started to caress her round belly. Ginny, that's not an excuse. I'm a grown man. I should know better. She shushed him sweetly. Harry, I love you, she murmured softly. I love you for what you are. I love you because you are brave, just, and affectionate to me. I love you because you always put your best in everything. You listen to me. You reflect on things. When you are wrong, you admit it and apologize. You make me feel secure and protected. She leaned to kiss him. When I was young, I had a crush on you because of your story. That's true. You asked me if I would have tried to get to know you if you weren't anybody. I cannot answer to that question. I don't know. As you cannot know if you had ever looked at me if I wasn't Ron's sister. But what did it start as a girl crush developed in real love getting to know you? After a bit, your popularity started to be a drawback for me, not an enhancement. It kept you away from me. Too many girls with better charms were gravitating around you, and overall, you were always in danger, threatened to death. It was dangerous love mine. I was loving a guy that could die any second. If you weren't what you are, the crush would have withered away eventually. But it didn't. I'm in love with Harry Potter. Not the one on magazine, not the one that saved the world, but the one that day after day is showing me faithfulness, sweetness, and devotion. The man to whom I can always count if some issues arise, and is always there to help me and make me happy. Harry was struck. He didn't expect such a declaration of love. He realized that she knew all that already, and he had always known deep down. It had been stupid of him to think of her otherwise. However, as it's always pleasant to hear praises from the loved one, and he wasn't an exception in this case. He was delighted. He felt his heart swelling with the sentiments he nurtured for her, and he knew he could never have loved any other woman but Ginny. His life would have been thinned into nothingness without her love, and he felt grateful and lucky to be able to secure it so strongly to his person. He sat up and kissed her, overwhelmed and wordless. How can one answer to such speech? No answer seemed appropriate. He could just kiss her and hope he would speak for him. And he was sure he did, as she kissed him back, lying close to him. And, cuddling each other, they drifted together in a peaceful sleep. And that was the end of chapter 19. So, we had a nice and satisfying argument, but in the end, they made up nicely. I really like the nightmare of this chapter. I think it represents very well all Harry's insecurity about popularity. And well, I don't know, I like argument too. So I guess we can proceed to chapter 20, which is the last one of the evening, and is called The Little Mercenary. The next day, Ginny was gone to the barrel by herself to pick up the boys. Molly had organized a big Wesley lunch to celebrate Ron's return. Obviously, Harry called himself out as soon as Ginny informed him of it. She tried in every possible way to convince him, in turn with sweetness and entreating. Even Molly contacted them through the fireplace to coax him, but he was inflexible. He still kept to his resolution not to see Ron again. He was sorry to miss the lunch. He always enjoyed those kinds of reunions, especially in summer where they could eat outside. It was already a long time he hadn't had the chance to meet Bill. He was still a bit reluctant in going to Shell Cottage since Christmas. He was scared of his possible reaction in seeing the place again. And he was eager to see George as well. But everything was obliterated by the possibility of meeting Ron. The only thought kindled his irritation again. Months had passed by, but these hadn't changed. He knew that once them being back in England, everybody would have tried to coax him in a meeting. But he was prepared. He was ready to renounce to the happiness of a reunion with his only family, not to see him. So he spurned every attempt and stayed home. He considered visiting Ted, but then he was reminded that he would have probably been to the Weasley too, since Victoire was there. He surrendered at the thought that he would have been the only one not enjoying himself that day. He went to his office to tidy up the mess left there the day before and to catch up with some work left undone. Glancing at the mountain of letters that Albus had filed, decided to go through some of them. It was a long and tedious job. He didn't read all of them. It could have taken the whole day, but opened a few. Nothing new. There were some children's ones that made him smile. He would have answered to those at least, if it wouldn't have been for the fact that he didn't want to encourage that kind of correspondence in any way. There was Regina's one too. He opened it out of curiosity, and it turned out to be not one of the most innocent ones. Dear Harry, I don't know if you ever read these. Blah, 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 blah. I dreamt about you tonight, and it was such a horny dream. You were taking me in your hands and... Dot, 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 dot. You are so hot. When I see you in the morning, I get so... Dot, 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 dot. I cannot help but to shut myself in my room afterward to... Dot, 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 dot. I know it sounds silly, but I truly love you, even if we never talked. I feel like we are made for each other. I just feel it. It's like if I have always known you, and I'm sure nobody will ever understand you as I would.
I do anything for you. I know you are married. It doesn't matter to me. This is my address. If you'll ever want to meet. Blah, 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 blah. Kisses, kisses, kisses. Regina. He thrusted it aside with the usual mixed feelings. Ignoring the insane part regarding being made for each other, how could she even think something like that was the wonder? He thought how bizarre it was to be unknowingly in somebody else's dreams. And in a dream of that kind as well. Ginny wouldn't have been pleased, especially because, as Regina couldn't help to shut herself in a room to relieve her passion, he couldn't help but picture the whole content of the letter. Probably, it was even Regina's object. Most probably, actually. He couldn't stop his brain to do it, no matter how strongly he reproached himself for it. That girl could almost have been his daughter. Almost. He would have been a very young father, but nevertheless. And then he was happily married. But it was also true that strictly speaking, he wasn't cheating if there wasn't any real intention behind it. And anyway, it was so damn difficult to control his imagination when everything was described so well, and when all the time that she gave him letters her outfit led so little to ingenuity. He pushed the letter a bit farther away, promising himself not to read Regina's one anymore, and not to look at her too closely the next time. He opened a new one, and as soon as he read the fourth sentence, confused, he reached for the envelope to check the sender's name. Bianca Hooping. Haha, James Sweetheart. Harry was very undecided on what to do. The letter was there, already open in his hand, ready to be read. It was also true that it wasn't addressed to him, and it was very wrong to read other people's correspondence. Oh, what the heck. Dear James, I hope you are well. I wanted to write you a letter, but not knowing your address, I decided to send it to your father at work, hoping that it will get to you. If you give it to me, I can write directly to you the next time. I miss you very much. I think about you all the time, and this summer seems unbearably long. I talked about you to all my muggles friends, and they are wild to meet you. Shame I cannot show them any picture of you as they are all moving, and it would be such a giveaway. I told them you are quite famous, being the son of a very important person, and they were very impressed. I could tell the truth to my parents and to my sister, though. My father didn't get it being a muggle, but my mom was very excited and told me that you are welcome anytime if you want to pop in and bring your dad too. I spotted him briefly on the platform 9 3/4, and I do so wish to meet him and to have an autograph on my chocolate cat frog. I hope very much you will. We have a nice house and a swimming pool. We could have some fun. Let me know if you can come. Love, Bianca. A little mercenary. It was easier to understand James' struggle reading this letter. It was so obvious that she fancied him just for the luster of being seen with somebody important. It wasn't his business anyway. He had to make his own experiences and decide for himself. He closed the envelope with a charm that left no trace of him having reading it, and pocketed it. After some more of nonsensical letters, he go back home, where Ginny and the kids were waiting for him to get dinner. While they were eating the light meal Ginny had prepared, Harry told James casually about having received a letter for him at work. From whom? James asked, eating his green beans unenthusiastically. Harry took the envelope from his pocket, flipped it casually as to read the sender's name, and trying to suppress a smile and to appear as composed as possible, said, "A certain girl called Bianca, apparently." There was a clang as James dropped his fork flustered. Thankfully, his fluster prevented him to spot the broad grin appearing on both Ginny's and Albus's face simultaneously. "Who is she?" Harry asked nonchalantly, giving him the letter. He took it quickly and thrust it in his jeans pocket. Nobody. I know who she is, Albus sing-song cheekily. They heard a thump under the table, followed by a grimace from Albus, who tailed off. Jenny, without hiding a twinkling in her eyes, asked him, Is she your girlfriend? She's just a friend, he answered Scarlet, sulking madly. And it's nobody's business. I should be able to receive my mail without the whole family to know I want an owl.
Keep your hair on. With that attitude, you can rest assured you won't get anything, Harry replied calmly. And you know why we can't. We have already explained you thousands of times. It can be spotted. We cannot run the risk.
But we could let it out at night. Nobody would see it. You had one when you were young. Why can we not?
How'd you know? He asked, surprised, remembering Edwig. He had never told them.
Aunt Hermione told me today. I told her how unfair it was that we couldn't get an owl, and she told me about Edwig. And she told me as well to remind you about the Dursley.
Harry sniggered. How he missed speaking to her. She sent him a reproach through James not being able to meet him anymore. Hermione knew how, in the educational sphere, he made his personal line of conduct to behave as totally opposite as the Dursley behaved with him in a sure way to do the right thing. James, seeing his smile, asked,
Who are the Dursleys? Why she told me to tell you that?
They are my uncle and aunt, the ones who...
He hesitated.
Raised me? No, they surely didn't raise me. Took care of me? No, that neither. Jeez. Offered me grudgingly a roof until I was 17, he went for in the end. Your aunt wanted to remind me how charmingly they behaved toward Edwig. But this is different. We were living in a suburb back then. Now we are in a densely populated borough. We cannot get one. And as James opened his mouth to retort, Ginny stated firmly, You heard what your father said. We won't get one. James sulked worse than ever, and as it was usual by now since his return from Hogwarts, he didn't open his mouth again for the rest of the meal. Harry, privately, despite having asserted so sternly otherwise, decided to talk it over to Ginny again. James had a point. He was entering an age where social interactions were vital, and he needed to have some privacy in his correspondence. Perhaps they could find a way to get around the problem with some thinking. If even Hermione was siding with him, it meant that could be done. One must listen to his conscience when she tried to send you an hint. When the kids retired for their room, Harry offered to Ginny to wash dishes together. He wanted to know about the day and about Ron. It turned out that Ron was in a good mood. He liked being in Romania, was getting used to the language, Hermione was already speaking it quite fluently, and he didn't mind his job. About James and Albus some colorful dragon scales, and had joked pleasantly, happy to be back in his family. He had seemed awkward, understanding that Harry wouldn't have been there, and he talked to Ginny in private to inquire after him. What did you tell him? That you still don't want to see him, she replied with a frown. What did you say? He didn't say anything. He just looked forlorn, Harry grunted. Why don't you want to admit that you like to see him? Because I don't. So then why all these questions? Silence. He didn't even know why he asked all these questions. Because he anyway cared about him? Because he felt very lonely since he and Hermione had moved away? Harry didn't know, but he was sure he didn't want to see him. He was glad he was striving, though. More for Hermione's sake, probably. He didn't want her having a hard time because of Ron. He wondered, as well, why they were still together after what had passed. Probably for the kids. Was he right, though? But it wasn't his place to decide or condemn. Tomorrow we should get the pictures. Ginny woke him up. from his reflections. What pictures? Harry answered with his mind still on Ron, starting to rinse the last glass. Ginny rolled her eyes.
The Witch Weekly ones! Which one?
Ha, right, he answered, totally unconcerned. Hello, Irene. Hi. And that was then. Was then the last chapter of tonight. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, I guess we will see each other the next week. I will upload the chapters either tonight or tomorrow morning, probably tonight, on my website, which is www.atscribblingaloud.wordpress.com. And I guess the next week we are going probably to have just 2 chapters because they are quite long, and we will see the pictures. The picture will get there, and we will see them. And then in the other chapters, I think, if I remind correctly, yeah, in the next chapter, Harry and Hermione are going to meet. So yeah, we will have 2 nice chapters the next week. And I guess that's all for tonight. And I thank you very much for being here. It's always a pleasure, and I hope to see you next week. And yeah, that's all. Good night, guys. Thank you again.